Hey there. Hey, this is Ron, and I'm going to say this is going on Ron's fuel stop because I'm going to finally put something over on YouTube. But you may be watching this on Facebook instead, if that's your choice. I've been thinking for a couple of months quite a bit about a topic that I would post on here, and usually when I post something, it is about trucking and it is about life. Um, So as I'm sitting down here in Manchester, Tennessee, parked next to a Landstar, which is where I used to be, um, I had time here to shoot this and work it out in my head what I would say. Um, so I'm titling this "Cultural Defensive Driving," and it's going to be about defensive driving, but you got to give me a second to get there because defensive driving has changed. I don't know how it was when you learned how to drive. Um, they've nationalized driver's ed now, and I understand part of why they did it is to make it the same in every state, but they've also taken away a lot of the detail that we used to get. I think by having it tied to our high schools and um, being a part of a cohort of people who were going through driver's ed. And so I'm talking to you today about driving in the United States and ultimately about driving a semi, because that's the perspective I'm coming from here, driving an 18-wheeler around the country in various big cities and country roads and interstates, and how it's changed. So first of all, let me go back about 15 years when I started really beginning to understand the cultural influence uh, on things as practical as driving. My wife and I were in Europe on a little trip about 15 years ago. Uh, we went to 11 different countries, and of course we were in Switzerland. That was one of them. And being in Switzerland, I wanted to buy a Swiss watch. So we got off the bus. We were part of a tour group, about 40 people. We got off the bus, and some of us went in. I don't know, 6 or 8 of us went in to buy watches, and at this Swiss watch factory outlet store. And while we were there looking, a bus came in, people all from one country, and I won't say the country, but I just really on this, I'm trying to stay away from being prejudiced or being slanted against or toward any one type of people. What I'm talking about is the culture, not the color, not the race, but people's cultures are different. And so these people came in, and we were there at the counter, but they butted right in front of us. They basically shouldered us over, and they got in front of the counter, picked out what watches they wanted. And I mean, we're in a foreign country. We're not going to make a scene, and we didn't. And they all bought watches, and then we all bought watches. Of course, if you're in a Swiss watch factory store, they ain't going to run out of watches. That's the one thing they're not going to do, right? We all got watches. But what I learned then at the end, when the attendant at the counter said to me, apologize for that, sir. You know, where some people come from, they just don't understand that we're not gonna run out. And they think that they might be getting the last one. And I came to understand that day that there is a cultural way of thinking in the world that's a scarcity way of thinking. Scarcity. There's not enough. Therefore, whoever's first, whoever pushes hardest, whoever pushes others out of the way, they're the ones that maybe will get something to eat, will get something, shelter, whatever. And if you're not first or second, then you might be without. Some of you probably grew up in families that were big and probably had a little bit of that going on. So that kind of went in the hopper there when I started. That was just before I went back to driving truck about 14 years ago. And I started to get on the road, and there's a lot of international drivers on the road. There's programs. We even have some programs in our own company here, and they bring people from other countries in, and they drive alongside of us, and they're wonderful. A lot of them have wonderful work ethics and great drivers, and some of you guys are probably watching me right now, and we love you guys. But there are cultures of the world are different, and that's where I want to hit you right now as you're driving, or as you're thinking about driving. Because in America, we have what's called a law and order culture. You've heard it many times on different politicians, different people talking about, we're a law and order culture. But it's just true. I mean, we're a country where there's a law for everything. It's not uncommon to see signs posted going into a park to talk about there being a fine for one thing or another, or a time that you can only be there until. This park closes at dusk. On the road, there may be a sign that says there's going to be a $500 fine for littering, and various fines like the speed limit. And ultimately, we know that in our culture there are rules and laws that we break that put us in jail. And some of those, if I knew that you had committed a crime in one of those areas because of our law and order culture, if I knew and I didn't say anything, I would go to jail. And so we're very much thinking of that. I'm going down the road, speed limit says 55. I'm thinking, I'm in a hurry, but I'm not going to go more than 60, or I'm going to get a ticket, and I might get penalized or lose my job. And that motivates me to obey the law. So we're a law and order culture. Not all cultures are like that. We've had huge influxes of people into our country. We've always had people coming into our country, but we assimilate them, and they gradually, they come over to thinking like most Americans think. But over the last few decades, we haven't so much done that. We've sort of bent ourselves to accommodate the way that other people are. I'm not trying to make you upset. It's just I believe this is very true. And I have seen thousands, I'm positive thousands of drivers on the road that don't think this way, law and order. So the second one I'll bring up is one I did learn about this when I was going to seminary a few years back, and we were trying to learn more about Middle Eastern cultures. Now, Middle Eastern culture, most people from that Middle Eastern culture, if they haven't been westernized, let's say, haven't lived here for a few decades, they're an honor culture. And so everything that motivates them and the decisions they make in their daily life are all about honor. And the honoring is about family. They're going to honor their uncle, their mom and dad, their brother, their sister, and they would never think of turning them in for a crime that they've done. I mean, that would be so dishonoring. And many of their laws are about what will be done to you if you dishonor. I mean, if you turn from their religion, you can be penalized in a great way. And there's many women who have left these religions and these cultures of Middle Eastern countries who have had terrible things done to them, and some of them even killed. And that is somewhat normal in that culture. It's a part of their culture, the way that people grew up. And there are many ways that that trickles down to the everyday life. And in driving, it definitely trickles down. Because let's say I'm going along and the speed limit's 55, and I think I better not break the speed limit too much because the law. And if I think, well, my company wants me to get there on time, but you know what? My company knows they don't want me to break the law, and I won't feel the pressure to break the law to do my job. But there are others out there who, it's their uncle that owns the company, or it's their family, and they're trying to honor them. And in doing so, the thing that's on their mind is, I got to get there. And it's more important that I get there, or that I maybe cut you off in traffic in doing so, than it is it's just the top. It is hard to even say, but I know this is true, and you need to realize this for driving. There's just much more of an aggressive mindset. And then thirdly, this is the one I've noticed the most in the last 5 to 10 years, And this is the one that's the most dangerous. And that is a survival mentality. And, the Statue of Liberty, we say, give us, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. And even as a Christian, I want people to be able to be a part of our country and to be able to assimilate into our culture and to be able to take advantage of the freedom that we have to become whatever you want to be in life. But when you have come from a survival mentality, that means you have this mentality that you've got to be first or you might get nothing. That, you've got to grab what you can when you can. And there's not a defensive driving mentality. There's an offensive driving mentality. Now, I understand that in a sport, you've got to play offense and defense. But I don't think you do that so much in driving. I'm not going to block you. I'm not going to bump you. I'm not going to push you or shove you and get you out of my way in order for me to win. Winning is not about, at the end of the day, winning is about safety. I mean, all these companies that I've been associated with, safety always is number one. That's not what's number one in some of these other cultures. Ooh, are you okay? I don't know if I'm okay. So I just want you to realize that. I'm not saying, I have a lot of ways of thinking that I'm sure are wrong. And I think every one of us has a blind side to our thinking. But what I do know is that driving a semi is a very dangerous thing, even all by yourself. And you have to be at the top of your game all the time. And if everybody follows the rules and reads the signs and does what they say and merges when they're supposed to and drives in the lane that is appropriate and at the speed that's appropriate, then the chances are much lower of us having major accidents. But when you ignore all of that, or worse, when state patrols in some states and counties have been told, just ignore that, we don't want to be accused of being one way or the other against people from other countries, that makes things dangerous. So for you who drive a passenger vehicle, one particular thing I want you to really, really be aware of. And all of us who drive a semi struggle with this one thing. And with the aggressive drivers out there, you're going to struggle with it a little bit more. We've all been taught that you travel in the rightmost lane possible. So if there's a 4-lane highway and there's 2 lanes going your direction, let's say east, you're going to travel in the right lane, and the only time you travel in the left lane is to get around somebody, and then you would return to the right lane. Now, I've noticed that is totally ignored by a lot of younger drivers and certainly a lot of international drivers. I don't know if they weren't taught that. It's just something that happens. Now, on top of that, I want you to realize something else. So I'm going to take you out with me for a second here, outside my truck. And we're going to look at the back of this Landstar truck. Maybe he will, or she, whoever it is, will watch this video. But you're coming up behind a truck like this, and there's room on the right-hand side here to get past them. And so you proceed on the right-hand side. Now, I want you to know that when you get up to a certain point on that truck, they can no longer see you. And if you happen to be in this area right here, passing a truck, this is my truck now, there's a very good chance I can't see you. And if a truck turns over on you to the right, into your right lane, they're not trying to be nasty to you. They can't see you. And I always do it very carefully. I look at all my mirrors. I'm trying to be very careful about that because I know there might be somebody there. But in people who are being more aggressive in their driving, they may just shoot right over there on you, and you'll end up under their trailer. And that's one of the most common accidents that happens out here is lane changes. We're supposed to be doing as few of them as possible in our semi. That's what we're taught. And what I've learned going around the city of Chicago, where it just total chaos the whole way around nowadays. The people will fight for a lane, and a lot of these international drivers or younger drivers, you see them fighting for a lane. There's 3-4 lanes to choose from, sometimes 5, and they're trying to get to the fast lane, get to the one that they can make some progress on. And then I'll notice 45 minutes later, when we're almost to the other side of town, maybe an hour, hour and a half later, there they are passing me again. Now, how did that happen? I just cruise along in, so let's say, the second lane, and I don't ever change lanes. I slow down, speed up with the traffic. I don't try to juggle for the fastest lane, and yet here I am ahead of them again. That's because it doesn't pay to juggle and trade lanes to try to make, because that lane is going to get stuck up eventually too, and then that increases chances of accidents. You can't even get through a city like Chicago anymore without hitting 1 or 2 accidents. Anyway, I'm telling you this because I want people to be safe. I want people not to get so angry. If you understand where someone is coming from, you know, it doesn't make them right, but it does kind of let you know that some people's culture is different than your culture, or they haven't yet adjusted to the culture that we live in, this law and order culture that we live in. So I'm going to post this, and like a lot of videos that I post, I end up taking them down, or maybe I edit them, or I add something. I don't know. I'm not trying to be offensive, and if somebody doesn't like it, I don't know, maybe you need to hear it. Anyway, I always say God bless you, and I wish you the best in your life and even in your day. Drive safe out there. Defensive driving, that's what we do here in the United States.